رحمته رب لكنت من المحضرين أفما نحن بميتين إلا موتنا الأولى وما نحن بمعذبين إن هذا لهو الفوز العظيم صدق الله العظيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. As I begin, I just right now recited the dua of Musa alayhi salam where he made when he was given a task where he wanted no impediments to come in his speech. The reason I'm making this dua right now is because I want to do my best to convey a message in this last khutbah of mine as I'm here on this island, inshallah. This last khutbah of mine on this island, inshallah, I really wanted to convey a message to all of you guys here, and I'm really appreciative of the relationship I was able to build with all of you guys here. And I wanted to send a message, and I'm hoping that inshallah I'm able to send that message in the best way possible. For the remainder of this khutbah, I just ask of you guys to do your best to give me your ear, because I really want the message that I'm giving today to resonate with some of you, inshallah, if Allah wills. The ayahs that I just recited, they come from Surah, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, sorry, Surah Safat. They come from Surah Safat, and I'm going to dive into the translation of these ayat in a little bit. But before I do, I'll just give a description really quick. This is a description. I'm going to talk about three groups of people today. And this is a description of one of those three groups of people. One of these three groups of people, the ones that I have just described, are the people of paradise. These are the people who made it to paradise, and they're sitting, and there's one particular person amongst this group who's asking a question, and he's requesting something of Allah. Brothers, during the khutbah, if we could just put it's just affecting the khutbah itself. I'm only saying that because I don't want your khutbah not to be accepted. One of the things that I've heard my teachers say is that when the khutbah is being given, to be fully attentive. So my apologies. I don't want to put you on the spot just for the sake of your own khutbah, being accepted. That's the reason I asked about. But anyways, going back to the topic at hand. One of these groups of people that I'm talking about, amongst them is a person who's asking a question. These are the people of paradise. They're getting together and they're laughing and enjoying in paradise. As they're talking about their time on this earth. They're talking about their time in this dunya, and when they're reminiscing and remembering the dunya, they're specifically remembering the challenges and the things that they've been through to get to where they are right now. But I'm going to talk about all three of these groups of people very soon. This is just one of the groups that I wanted to highlight. The second and the third of the three groups of people are both groups of people that are in the hellfire. They didn't make it. But they have a specific difference between them. And I'll highlight all of this, but I want to first talk about 4 stories in the Quran very briefly. 3 of these 4 stories come from Surah Kahf itself. And Surah Kahf is one of the surahs that we're recommended to recite on Fridays. And 3 of the stories that I want to talk about today come from Surah Kahf. One story relates to the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam. So all 4 stories from the Quran. And I'll delve right into these stories right away, and then I'm going to come back and talk about these 3 groups of people and the message that I really want to send home today. So the first group of people is who the Surah Kahf is actually titled after. The story of the cave, the people of the cave. Okay? So as we know, these are the people that they were running away. They were seeking refuge from their people who were causing them to do wrong. And they were, they had no other option. And it's not like we're recommended to run away from people who are in a wrong society, right? Because sometimes we could be a source of good for them. But I'm assuming it got to the point where they had to go away. And so they ran away and they sought refuge in a cave. And when they sought refuge in the cave, we know the miracle that happened. They were sleeping for hundreds of years, etc. It was a miracle of Allah. They came back, became a sign for the people. When I think about the story of the people of the cave, when I think about these youth in the cave, I specifically think about a few brothers that are sitting here right now with me. In particular, I think about 3 or 4 brothers that are here in this masjid right now. And I'm going to talk about these brothers with their, I had most of their permission to talk about them in the khutbah today. And I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to be describing these brothers, why The story of the cave reminded me of these brothers. The second story that I want to cover is the story of Musa and Khidr alayhi salam. So Musa alayhi salam and Khidr. The name Khidr is not revealed in the Quran, but this is what some of the scholars say his name was. So in this particular story, there's a few sub-stories, 3 in particular. So before I even get into the sub-stories, Musa alayhi salam was looking for Khidr with one of his servants. And they were on this journey to find Khidr because he wanted to seek knowledge from him that he did not have. Right? And Musa alayhi salam, he's a prophet at this time. He was the one that was revealed the Torah, but still he was seeking knowledge. And that just tells you, that everyone is a student of knowledge. So he goes on this search for this person of knowledge, and when he finally finds him, I'm narrating, of course, I'm paraphrasing the story. When he finally finds him, the Quran does something beautiful when they describe him. And this is Ayah 65 of Surah Kahf. It says, and they found a servant from among our servants, to whom we had given mercy from us and had taught from us a certain knowledge. So even this person who had knowledge that Musa alayhi salam was not given, Allah describes him as nothing more than a servant, right? And that's important to understand. When Musa alayhi salam was seeking this person, he had a servant with him. But when he found this person whom he was seeking, he was nothing more than a student. And then when he was under the tutelage of this person, that person himself was described as nothing more than a servant. So no matter, even in our own stories, if you're in a status of position of authority, or you're in a position of seeking of weakness, you're nothing more than a servant of Allah, as Allah describes both of these people. So, going into these stories just very quickly, one of the stories was Khidr, he destroyed a boat of a people, which would cause that boat to sink. And Musa was like, what did you just do? They didn't do anything to us. And then Khidr said, I told you wouldn't have the patience for this. And the second story is he killed an innocent child. The child was doing nothing more than playing with his friends. And he snapped his neck. And Musa was like, and this is the same Musa that when he saw someone being, bullied in the streets of Egypt, he stood up for this person. And he's like, did you just kill an innocent child who did nothing to anyone? He said, I told you you wouldn't be able to have patience. And he says, okay, I won't say anything after this. And the last story was they went to some people who treated them very poorly. And then on the way out, there was a wall that was broken, and they reconstructed that wall. And Musa alayhi salam was like, you could have at least charged them for this. They were horrible to us. They were hungry and everything. You could have at least charged them for this. And that was the parting between them. And then he described, the wisdoms of all of these things. The boat was going to be seized by a king, and the child was going to be, a torture for his parents later on, and Allah wanted to replace that with a good child. And the third was, that there was property that belonged to orphans, and that wall was to construct and protect that property. But in all of these stories, something interesting comes to mind, and it's a lesson for us. Sometimes you will do good for people, and they're going to do bad back to you. And sometimes you haven't done anything to anyone, and they're still going to harm you. And you might question, Ya Allah, this makes no sense. I've only done good. Like, why is this happening? And in all of these situations, these people who did harm, as well as you doing good, is nothing more than the plan of Allah, happening exactly how it's supposed to happen. Now I'm going to come back to this story as well. But the third story I want to talk about is one of my favorite stories in the Quran, because it talks about one of the people, the person I look up to the most. And it's the story of Dhul Qarnayn. This is towards the end of Surah Kahf. And Dhul Qarnayn, there is rumors about who he might be, but again, we're not given that information. All we're given is the stories, is the lessons to learn from him. So in Ayah 95, Allah describes him as saying, that which my Lord has established with me is better. I will make between you and them a dam. He's talking to the people seeking refuge from Yajuj and Majuj. And then when he finally constructed that, Ayah 98, of course I'm paraphrasing, he says, this is a mercy from my Lord. When the promise of my Lord comes, he will make it level, and the promise of my Lord is true. Now this is another person. He's in a state of immense power. The way the historians, when they describe him as a person who could have been a warrior king who, established his throne on the land in many areas. But still, the way he's describing it as nothing more than when Allah wills, this will be nothing more than dust. Right? So this is a person of power who's describing himself in a way where he's nothing more than, again, a servant of Allah. And the last story I want to briefly go over is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam in the prison. Yusuf alayhi salam, he was described as one of the most beautiful people, right? The most beautiful people. And then he was growing up, and he was, he did nothing wrong. He was nothing more than a child. But he was thrown in a dam by his own brother. He was thrown in a well by his own brothers. And then he was, under this tutelage of slavery. And having done nothing wrong, and when you think things can't get any worse, he was thrown into prison. And when he was imprisoned, that's what I particularly want to talk about. When he was in a tough spot in prison, he started narrating dreams. He went right to work. He was spreading the message of Allah. He was describing, if you read the actual description of it, he was describing himself, it was being described of him as he was pretty much giving da'wah while he was in prison. And, it's not, he briefly mentioned to one of the people who was escaping that, don't forget me when you talk to your Lord. But he was getting nothing in return of this. This is just something that he was doing, the situation that he was in. So finally, I want to talk about why I gave you 4 very vague stories and try to tie them together, and then again briefly go over the three particular groups of people that I mentioned at the beginning of the khutbah. So most of our situations are temporary in life. All of our situations are actually temporary in life. A lot of the people in attendance here are medical students or medical professors, right? You're not from St. Vincent. If I asked you, any of you 2 years ago, you're going to St. Vincent in 2 years, you'd probably be like, where is that on the map? If someone asked me 2 years ago, I would not have even known where this was, right? But you're here for some strange reason. And a lot of people that go to my school, you would know that 2 of our semesters were actually online. And some schools continued being online, but still, for some reason, you're here. And there's another brother right here. He's here for work, for construction, I believe he does development or something of construction sites. Why are you here? He's from Trinidad and Tobago. Why are you here? I actually made a particular effort to talk to, or a particular request to some of the brothers that are locals here. And I said, I want you to invite some of the brothers who may not be frequent here to come to this masjid today for this particular khutbah. Why are you here? Because not everyone came. Some of these brothers were given, the invitation, but not everyone came. And then the rest of the brothers who have been here week after week, don't be mistaken. You being here today is not because you're here on a weekly basis. You being here today is because Allah has sent that invitation, just like maybe Allah had sent that invitation to any of these brothers, and you came today. My point being, everyone that's here, particularly in St. Vincent, in this land where, from my observations, it's a very hard land to practice Islam. It's a very hard land to stay on the deen. But you're still here for a certain reason. Allah saw something inside of you, right? And we might not know what that reason might be. One of the brothers here, Brother Kudama, he grew up in St. Vincent. And I believe his family's not even Muslim, but he was sent to Toronto and then to New York. And in Toronto is where he accepted Islam. There's another brother here, he's a pastor. He used to be a pastor, sorry. He was preaching Christianity for most of his life. And he grew up in St. Vincent, I believe. He was around here. And he accepted Islam, and his story, all these stories I want to get to in a little bit because they're very interesting to me. We have another brother here, Brother Rashid. His story was also very interesting to me. He grew up, but he didn't grow up Muslim, right? And then some of these brothers here, we have brothers here from North Carolina. Why are you here from North Carolina? We got a brother here from Chi-Town. What brought you here from Chi-Town? We got all these, we have a brother here from the University of Michigan. I feel bad for you, right? You're here in this high school kind of school from the University of Michigan. You can be angry about it, but you're here. You're here for a reason. We got a brother who has a PhD, and he's here to study medicine. Why in St. Vincent? I just want you to ask yourself that question. Why are you here? All of you have an interesting story. And most of you are here very random. So again, I want to go back to this point. Allah saw something inside of you. There was something inside of you that brought you here, and I'm sorry to say it, but you have to live up to that expectation. Because there's two responses people will have when they hear this, when they hear me say this. People will either, the people that I'm sending this message to, when I tell them that you have an expectation of doing something while you're here. You're all here for 2 reasons. One of those reasons is your mission for a lot of medical students here, and you have I talk to a lot of you guys have some very noble and, aspiring kind of visions here. We have a brother here who wants to be a trauma surgeon, and he wants to go to places that people need it. He wants to travel the world. My brother right here, Abdul Rahman, he wants to make a massive impact in the lives of people. That's very admirable. We have a brother here who's doing this because this was his dream since he was young, but he's doing it because he had to take care of his family for most of his life. And now, in a certain stage, when all of that's done, there's no reason for money or anything. He's coming back here to study medicine just because this was a dream of his. You guys have some, and we have another brother here who's into sports, and he wants to work with children as a pediatric doctor. And all of you guys have like an engineer before. You guys have some interesting stories. You guys have a mission. You guys have been here sent for a mission. But there's another reason you're here too. And that reason is you're here for a purpose. Right? And I'm not telling you to abandon your mission while you're here. For some of you here are here for a very short amount of time. Some of you are here for a lengthy amount of time. I'm not telling you to abandon your mission, whether it's being a business or whatever it may be. But I'm telling you, do not forget about your purpose. Now, there's two excuses I'm going to hear when I tell someone this, that Allah saw something inside of you and brought you here. The first excuse I'm going to hear is people say, I'm not up to this task. Right? They're going to say, Allah, I don't think Allah saw something inside of me. I don't think there was anything special about me. I think I'm just here by chance. Right? I don't see what there could be. And, on paper, you might